So you're watching me, but is the government watching you watching me? Or is the government watching you watch whatever else, whether on YouTube or other pieces of social media? The answer is apparently maybe. In uncovered documents, there have been at least 2 warrants where the federal government has subpoenaed Google to obtain the viewer watching data of who is checking out certain YouTube videos. And when I say data, you're not going to believe the type of micro data they are getting into. Guys, we're going to be talking about not only that, but I'm also going to be talking about other interesting emerging developments in digital Fourth Amendment law. My name's Tom Grieve. Let's get into it. All right, so let's talk about YouTube first. So what Forbes found in an article linked in the description box below was that in 2 particular instances, first instance discussed right now, there was this individual who was being investigated for potentially some money laundering by buying Bitcoin with cash and some other things. In order to investigate this individual, the feds and some undercover agents sent some links to some videos to this username that they were basically looking at. And then what they did was they used their power of warrants and subpoenas, and they got a court to agree to issue a warrant to Google, the keeper of the information, to basically take a look at certain information concerning the individuals who viewed the videos that they sent. It wasn't like there were 2 views on those videos. There were 30,000 plus views on these videos. And the court granted it. Now, we're not talking about generic information here as far as what they were after. They were after some very personal things. The court order obtained by Forbes showed that the government was telling Google to provide the names, addresses, telephone numbers, and user activity for all Google account users who accessed these YouTube videos between January 1st and January 8th of 2023. The government also wanted the IP addresses of non-Google account owners who viewed the videos. The government argued that there's reason to believe that these records would be relevant and material to ongoing criminal investigations, including by providing identifying information about the perpetrators. So that's the first case that happened, and that was in Kentucky. The second case happened in New Hampshire, and basically a bomb threat got called into a public place. And while the police were going about figuring out, is there a bomb in this trash can or not, they realized that they were being watched via live stream on some business YouTube cameras that were just kind of placed outside and something like that. Now, I don't have a lot of details about this. I'm inferring that these cameras were basically just kind of always on and you could always go to live stream them. Well, apparently it's a bit of a trend among some sick people out there to do these hoax, or I hope hoax at a minimum, bomb threats, and then watch the police deal with them across these live streaming YouTube or some other social media platforms. So here in New Hampshire, the police said, aha, so if I do basically the same thing that they did in Kentucky and want to see all the user data, maybe we could start to develop a list of suspects that we can then start to kind of keep going into. In that particular case, they asked Google to give a list of accounts that viewed and or interacted with 8 YouTube live streams, as well as, of course, all the associated identifying information during specific timeframes, presumably pertaining to when these bomb threats were called in. That included videos posted in Maine, in Boston, and these were from channels that had upwards of 130,000 subscribers. So again, not a 5-person account that no one ever watches. These sorts of requests sometimes have been called dragnet requests when we're talking about law enforcement not really having someone specific in mind. They're just kind of throwing a dragnet out there and seeing what they can find in it. Something that you may not be familiar with if you don't like that, or if you find that interesting, is something called GEO Fence warrants. Now, GEO Fence warrants are not something that's super obscure. They were first used in 2016. Then that rapidly escalated across the next 4 years. 2020 is the last year that I have any information on. But between those years, in 2018, for instance, there were 982 examples of Google being served with a GEO Fence warrant. That escalated to just over 11,500 in 2020. So that is rocket ship takeoff there. Now, guys, if you've made it this far in the video, congratulations, your digital fingerprints are already all over this. And obviously there's nothing bad about this video at all. But if you want others to see what's happening with our rights, with the Constitution and everything else that's out there, let them know by hitting the like button. That will tell Google this is good, get this video into the search algorithm, and it will show the video to others. That's the reason why, of course, YouTubers are always asking for that kind of stuff. I look forward to joining you in the comment section below. Now back to the video. So what is a GEO Fence warrant? I want you to imagine that there is a store that gets robbed. And what the police do is they say, look, I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to ask for everybody who had a cell phone who was at this store, whose cell phones were present between this particular time frame. Let's say the store got robbed at noon on a Tuesday, this particular Tuesday, then fine. Who was there from 11:55 to 12:10 on that particular Tuesday? And Google send us all of the identifying information for everybody who was there. That would be an example of a reasonably narrowly tailored, but nonetheless dragnet policy of a GEO Fence warrant of, hey, we know they're there. If they had a cell phone there, we might be able to get them through this way. So GEO Fence warrants, very real thing being used by law enforcement quite a bit, both at the state as well as a national level. We saw it used during the 2020 riots. We also saw it used from part of the January 6th prosecutions to develop information about who entered the Capitol. Basically, this is such a novel thing that we're still looking for a unified response from the courts. Nothing has gone to the U.S. Supreme Court yet. In a lot of cases that have kind of percolated up in the legal consciousness out there, they have been struck down, but I'm sure that there's many, 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 many other cases where trial courts have held them up. So this is basically a TBD, to be determined whether or not these cell phone dragnet GEO warrants are going to be held in place. But speaking of the court, the one time that the U.S. Supreme Court was involved in these novel emergent trends in law enforcement and digital technology, we're talking about 2017, the case is Carpenter versus United States. We're talking about cell phone towers. So this guy confesses to the FBI about committing some crimes. I think they were robberies or something like that. And he gives not only his cell phone number, but the cell phone numbers of his associates. Now, the government has a hard time because they don't have a tremendous amount of evidence at this point, as I understand it. And if they do, that's frankly irrelevant anyways, because what the government winds up doing is they go ahead and they issue a warrant to some cell phone companies to try to figure out who was communicating with these particular cell phones at this particular time and where were those people at the time that they were communicating. Because using cell phone data, if you go to make a cell phone call, basically there's going to be a log kept of where you were because which cell phone towers you connecting to, and there's triangulation and all sorts of other stuff. So they won't necessarily always know exactly where you were when you make a phone call or connect to a network, but they can, at a minimum, typically triangulate it to a pretty good area all at the same time. And obviously that depends where you are in the country. So based on the return of this information, Mr. Carpenter got indicted and raised his Fourth Amendment defense issues, saying, look, this is a violation of my reasonable expectation of privacy. It goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And in a 5-4 decision that saw Chief Justice Roberts writing the decision, joined by his colleagues on the left, the court ruled that this was a violation of the Fourth Amendment because it breached Mr. Carpenter's reasonable expectation of privacy on the grounds that people could not have foreseen that their data would be used in this way. There's more to it than that. If you want me to go into this deeper, let me know in the comment section, but in a one-sentence broad stroke, there it is. The dissent, which was actually, there was a variety of different dissents on this, but they largely hinged around, and this came from the right side of the court, the fact that, look, Fourth Amendment deals with property rights. Whose property was this data? Did it belong to the cell phone company or did it belong to Mr. Carpenter? And if it belonged to the cell phone company, was this really a violation at all? Again, it's more nuanced than that, but that was one of the themes that you see in them. These emerging trends can obviously intersect, and trust me, they will intersect with Second Amendment, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, all those things as we see increased regulation coming and attacking, whether it's things like 3D printing technology, who's accessing what firearms videos, firearm law, no matter how innocent it is, it's all going to be out there. You're always leaving digital footprints, digital cookie crumbs. I won't go beyond that right now. Again, if you want to see me cover this more in the future, let me know in the comments section below. If you dare, perhaps. Of course, if you've made it this far, please let me know you got something out of this by hitting that like button. This is a tad outside our normal mainstream, but I do think it's absolutely important enough to be covering. Now, of course, if you've made it this far, you know what's coming next, our quote of the day. This one comes from Greek philosopher Epictetus, quote, "One who laughs at themselves never runs out of things to laugh at." And that's good, because sometimes there's not always a lot of things to laugh at, so you have to find that laughter where you can. Links in the description box below to, of course, a lot of those goodies that I was talking about here. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you in the comment section and in the next one. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, please feel free to check out some of our other great content, and we'll see you in the next one.